Our team at Prison Professors really strives to keep people apprised of what's going on in the criminal justice system and what leaders are doing to advocate for people in prison. And some of you who have used the subject matter expert page on our website at Prison Professors would know that Hugh Hurwitz, a former director of the Bureau of Prisons, is somebody we rely upon to learn how we can advocate for people inside better. And today, what we saw today is that Hugh sent us an article that he recently published or wrote to be published in the Hill magazine. And I wanted to share that with members of our community. They can see it right here on our website. It'll appear on our blog today. But you would also see it in this article that was publicized in the Hill magazine. So I'm going to see if I can bring that up there on our screen. And yeah, there it is. Actually, I'll read it directly from the Hill. So this is on the cover. That is Director Peters, Colette Peters. She is the new director of the Bureau of Prisons. And this article was titled, let me see if I can move that around on the screen so that you can see it better. This article is titled 3 Steps to Setting Federal Prisons on the Right Path. So I'm going to go ahead and read it for people who are driving down the road or they are getting their information while they're exercising or something, because I think it's very important for any justice-impacted person to know what's going on. So this was published by Hugh Hurwitz, an opinion contributor, on this morning at 9:06 a.m. Eastern Time, so just about 40 minutes ago. And let's go ahead and read it. So the Federal Bureau of Prisons' mission is to safely and securely confine offenders and assist them in becoming law-abiding citizens. By most media accounts, the BOP is failing in this mission. Members of Congress have described the agency as crisis-plagued. BOP's recent history includes allegations of sexual assault against inmates and female staff at several institutions, staff misconduct and discipline issues at all levels of the agency, serious staffing shortages, and failure to implement policies under the 3-year-old First Step Act. New Bureau of Prisons BOP Director Colette Peters recently testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee. Director Peters undoubtedly has a big job ahead of her. Until recently, BOP had long been a model of quality and consistency, but has lacked permanent, consistent leadership for years. Peters is the 7th acting director in 7 years. Senate committee members, other members of Congress, DOJ leadership, and many stakeholders all are pushing Peters to do more. Most changes and priorities will require the right resources in people, time, and money. To reverse these trends and restore BOP's place as the premier correctional agency in the world, Peters will need to be allowed to initially focus on 3 important areas. Succeeding in these areas will open the doors to making many of the other changes she and others wish to achieve. First, focus on the staff. Peters is known to care greatly about staff. It has been a focal point through her career in Oregon. BOP must work to fill many vacant jobs. Easier said than done, as recruiting people to work inside prison is a challenge for all correctional systems. To help achieve these hiring goals, the union must partner with Peters. They have an ownership stake in recruiting quality staff too, and often can be the best source for new hires. However, putting up advertisements and billboards criticizing BOP scares away potential applicants. They should be advertising the positive aspects of BOP to entice more quality applicants. Hiring is the most basic and critical issue, and BOP's success will be significantly enhanced with the union working side by side with Peters and her leadership team. But filling positions is only half the staffing battle. BOP needs to root out the small percentage of bad staff involved in misconduct at all levels. Inmates and staff alike must be free to report misconduct. They often don't for fear of retaliation. BOP's processes for dealing with inmate and staff grievances takes too long, and too often the grievances do not get the serious attention needed to weed out the bad apples. BOP needs an independent body responsible for conducting these investigations. That body needs to be able to act quickly and have authority to remove wrongdoers or recommend lesser actions to BOP leadership. On September 28th, the Federal Prison Oversight Act was introduced in Congress. It would require DOJ to create an ombudsman to field complaints about prison conditions. Taking that responsibility out of BOP to receive and investigate misconduct claims is a good idea. But if an ombudsman is established, the office will need sufficient staff and resources to do the job. Second, begin to address BOP infrastructure. Inmates and staff need safe, well-maintained prisons. Peters testified that BOP's infrastructure is in such bad shape that they need to prioritize the life safety issues and let other needs go unmet. She noted that BOP has over $2 billion of structural needs and repairs, but their annual appropriation is under $100 million. Obviously, that is unsustainable. At the same time, BOP's population is down to about 158,000 people from the peak of nearly 220,000. COVID and the CARES Act showed that we can safely put more people in home confinement and halfway houses without increasing crime. As the BOP continues to implement the FSA, it will continue to move more low-risk people to community confinement or supervision and out of prison. The reductions in population create new opportunities to address the crumbling infrastructure and rethink the BOP of the future. This includes looking at closing some BOP facilities. All factors should be considered, not just age, but also cost, to make needed repairs and upkeep, location and ability to hire staff, distance from inmate families, access to community programs, medical care, education, etc. The House 2023 budget bill provides funding for this exact study. Congress needs to provide that funding so BOP can get an independent recommendation of which facilities to close. Congress must then work with Peters and, rather than cutting positions associated with those facilities, they must allow BOP to retain some of the positions and recalibrate them to other facilities. This would be a win-win, as it will allow BOP to move significant numbers of staff to other facilities and allow Congress to save taxpayer money now and in the future by reducing BOP's total staff complement. If BOP is allowed to close the facilities that are draining the most resources, it will allow BOP to improve the remaining facilities, the lives of staff, inmates, and their families. Finally, demonstrate a commitment to fully implementing the First Step Act, which was the culmination of years of bipartisan effort and the first major criminal justice reform legislation in a generation. When fully implemented, the FSA reduces overly lengthy prison sentences and better prepares inmates to successfully re-enter society. Efforts to fully implement the FSA have been hampered by the pandemic, staffing shortages, and failed policy implementation. Director Peters cannot repair all this overnight, but she needs to demonstrate to Congress, BOP staff, and all stakeholders that implementation of this significant legislation is on the top of her list. In her testimony, Peters said that she and the BOP prioritizes full implementation of the FSA, providing clear direction to inmates and their families about how they can earn time credits toward community placement, ensure staff are trained and understand the process, and work toward increasing programs will go a long way toward demonstrating that the BOP takes the FSA seriously and will continue to improve as staffing and policy issues are resolved. If Peters is given the help and resources to resolve the staffing challenges and improve the infrastructure, she will have the staff and resources needed to fully implement the FSA, increased capacity to provide mental health treatment, medical care, education, and job training, and to ensure that the 95% of BOP population that are returning to our communities will be good neighbors that we can all be proud of. Hugh Hurwitz held multiple positions in the United States Bureau of Prisons, including acting director and assisting director for reentry services. Currently, he provides consulting services in prison management, reentry and reform, organizational change, and other areas. He is a member of the Council on Criminal Justice. And this was tagged with Federal Bureau of Prisons, Federal Prisons, First Step Act, and prison reform. We will be bringing attention to this through our network to try and help individuals that are justice impacted really understand what this means. And it's something that we have written about extensively in the past. I was in prison for 26 years and saw many prison reform legislation movements go through from the beginning of the transition from the old law to the new law that took place in 1984 to 1987. That was the era when I started my sentence. And then once I was inside, we saw many other reforms, including the Prison Litigation Reform Act, the the implementation of the 1994 Comprehensive Crime Bill, which ushered in the residential drug abuse program, including the Second Chance Act, which passed in 2007 and became signed in 2008. And then you, of course, have this First Step Act, which is big. Those are big legislative actions that require retraining in the Bureau of Prisons, and sometimes they take years to fully roll out. But every individual that's justice impacted needs to be thinking about, what steps can I take to position myself for the best possible outcome. And that's the reason that we publish every day on Prison Professors. We encourage people to visit that website or to subscribe to our iTunes channel or YouTube channel so they can get real-time information, and more importantly, they can find the pathway to engineer a strategy that will lead to the best possible outcomes for their journey. So I am Michael Santos with Prison Professors. If you're watching this inside of a jail or a prison, we really encourage you to be thinking about what you can do to advance the policies that advance efforts on advocacy efforts that can push this forward for the First Step Act and other prison reform movements. If you're watching this outside in the community and you're anticipating that you may be going into the system, or you're a defense attorney that represents people watching this outside, or a family member, we do encourage you to subscribe to the Prison Professors YouTube channel or iTunes program or wherever you get your social media, because we do publish every day with hopes of helping you get a better outcome. I am Michael Santos, and we believe in you. Thanks.